I was faced with a choice which I never should have had.
She was crying like I had never heard a woman cry before in my life.
And I just cried for weeks and weeks. Everything reminded me of a baby.
And I kept trying to get up from the table and look to see what was in that jar.
I was dealing with the loss of my unborn child and I didn't even know it.
I believe that my life was spared that night just so that I could be here right now and say abortion hurts women.
Whisper, be silent no more.
Welcome to Faces of Abortion. I'm your host, Cindy Collins, and today I am with my co-host, Alan Parker, who is president of the Justice Foundation, and Clayton Trotter, who is the general counsel of the Justice Foundation. Alan and Clayton, I'm so excited for what the Lord is going to be doing on our 5th season of Faces of Abortion.
It is wonderful to know that we're going to continue to bring powerful stories from men and women around the world who have been impacted deeply by abortion. And today we're going to hear from Daphne, who was a victim of rape. And we're also going to hear from Carla, her powerful testimony about how abortion affected her.
Yes, and now we're going to go ahead and listen to Daphne's story in her own words.
My name is Daphne Freeman. I'm from Lexington, Kentucky, and my sophomore year in college I was raped, and as a result of that I became pregnant and had an abortion in Montgomery, Alabama. I went into the abortion clinic asking for a truthful answer and wanted to know if I was killing my baby. I never had any kind of counseling, and on the table the doctor and the nurse came in and said, do I know the difference between cardboard, Kleenex, and tissue paper? And I said, yes, but what does that have to do with the child? She said, it's just lumps of tissue. And the nurse began to explain to me the consistency of the three. After that, she told me it wasn't a baby, it was just lumps of tissue, and they proceeded and put the mask on my face and I was out. Years later, after almost like a downward spiral, I ended up in another relationship, pregnant again, and I thought my parents were going to kill me. I was raised in a good home, military background, Christian family, and I was so ashamed I didn't want to tell them that I was pregnant. And so I ran to the abortion clinic here in Dallas, Texas, and had a second abortion. And the young lady asked me, what do I know about abortion? I said, I know if I don't hurry up, it's going to turn into a baby. And she just looked at me, and I asked her if I said anything wrong. She said, no, let's go ahead and get that done. And so went from there, involved in some wrong relationships, promiscuity issues, eventually really gave my life back to Christ and got back on track, met my husband, and 2 months after we were married, I was pregnant with our daughter. And during that pregnancy, 8 weeks into the pregnancy, we were living in Pittsburgh, and they have the GAP project, the University of Pittsburgh. And as we were coming around the corner from our doctor's office, I saw those graphic images of an aborted baby and looked at that and started screaming in the car. And that's when I told my husband I had not only had one abortion, but I had had 2. And could not explain why. Even though I thought, well, I was a Christian, but how did I do something like that? Because in my mind, I really didn't believe it was a child. But after being pregnant, I knew what I had done was wrong. Eventually ended up as the director of women's ministries for our local church. And it was the biggest secret I was trying to hide, because I thought if they knew, they were going to be so ashamed, and the guilt, and I was going to be rejected. And at a women's prayer meeting, I just felt the Holy Spirit just nudging on me to tell my story and to tell the truth. And I began to share with the women that I was post-abortive. And I was having bonding issues with my daughter because of the guilt of being a mom, and then yet the shame of what I had done. And when I began to share at the end of that, I had never shared it publicly, and I passed out. And I remember hearing the women just crying and just wailing of other women that have had abortions. About 3 weeks later, I was asked to be a part of a post-abortive ministry and or a pregnancy center, and I said, no, I'm not the one who they want. They want someone who who doesn't have any junk in their past. Well, I went ahead and became a part of that ministry, went through healing, forgiven and set free, ended up in Kansas City at a conference, was asked to come down for the memorial, which was to light the candles, and I said, Lord, I don't even know if it was a boy or a girl or what it was. And he said, your daughter's name is Anastasia for resurrection, and your son's name was David Jonathan for warrior spirit and servant's heart. And I went down. Well, at that moment, I fell on my knees and I said, God, I receive your forgiveness. And I forgave myself, and I had never done that. And I walked down and lit my candles and came back, and a little Asian lady came and placed her hand on my stomach and began to pray over me, the exact characteristics the Lord had just told me the names of my children. And I went back to our pregnancy center and said, I have to start a post-abortive ministry. And for the past 2 years, God has allowed me to help other women find the healing that I have found that have been so rich.
Welcome back to Faces of Abortion. You've just heard Daphne's story about how abortion had affected her life, of going into a downward spiral, how she felt that she was lied to, did not know the truth about abortion. If you have suffered through abortion's trauma, we want to encourage you to call our toll-free helpline. It's 1-866-482-LIFE. There is a woman on the other end of that line that wants to hear your story. In fact, she has gone through abortion herself. I know Alan and Clayton, in just listening to Daphne's story, we have heard so many of those stories from the millions of women that are in our nation that are hurting from abortion.
That's very true, and the pain is very common to all the women that we've talked to. Daphne's story is somewhat unusual in that her first abortion was a result of, her first pregnancy was a result of rape, and then she decided to have an abortion. Even then she was concerned, is it a baby? And she got the lie that abortionists tell her, it's just a mass of tissue. And so the rape situation is very difficult for a lot of people when they think about the pro-life issue. No one wants to force a woman to carry a rapist baby. But here we see what we've seen from so many of the victims of rape that we've talked to, that abortion's not the answer, even in that difficult situation. Instead, that brought heartache, whereas bringing the child to life who is innocent of any crime and giving the child to someone who could adopt the child and bring them up in a loving home is a loving, positive way to respond to the evil of rape. We don't want to respond by killing someone because somebody else got raped. That's not the right answer, and yet it's very difficult.
Well, and the answer is to overcome evil with good. Mm-hmm. You know, that obviously an evil occurred, but again, like you said, Alan, the baby's not responsible for that. The baby didn't cause it.
No, and in Daphne's story, we also see the evolution of her thinking about abortion as she gets more knowledge over the years. And when she had later pregnancies, this is so common for women who are told it's just a baby in their first pregnancy, just tissue, and they think that, and then they go through a regular pregnancy where they see the sonograms of a little live baby in their womb and a beating heart, and they realize they were lied to. The science shows them, this is a human being, this is my baby. Or when they're holding another child in their arms,